Alrighty guys, I'm just briefly starting off this video stating that today we are doing some benchmarks for two GTX970s in SLI. These things are absolutely gorgeous cards. No other changes to the system besides a 4.6 GHz overclock on the 4790K. So that's pretty much it for the intro. We're going to go ahead and hit the actual intro, and then we'll go ahead and get started with some benchmarks, followed by a conclusion later on. Alrighty guys, what's going on? Jake here, and first off we're going to start with the Unigine Valley benchmark. Really quickly, I'm going to go ahead and go over the specs of the system that we are running on. We have an Intel Core i7 4790K Haswell, currently running at 4.6 GHz with a core voltage of about 1.21. I had to bring it down from the stock because the stock was way too warm. It started to get up into the 80s and 90s Celsius on load, and I didn't want that at all. Currently we're running at about 55 degrees Celsius on all the cores. That's actually just about the average on one of them. And the max I've seen, of course we're only at about 25% load right now, the max I've seen at a Cinebench test at 100% load so far has been about 74 or 75 degrees Celsius, which is fantastic. As for the graphics cards, we are running two EVGA GeForce GTX 970 graphics cards. These are the super clocked versions. So of course the GPU clock sits at 1165 with a boost of 1317, although I am reading for both cards that the GPU clock is currently running at 1366 megahertz, which is actually very strange because you'd think that would be for a RAM module, but it's not. We're running on graphics cards. So in the top right and the top left we do have two FPS counters, both reading about the same. The bottom left is for shadow play, which I'm using to record, and in the top we also have the graphics for the 970s, and actually we are sitting at 1506 megahertz on the core clocks with 3505 megahertz on the memory clocks, with a 62 degrees on one and a 72 degrees on the bottom one, and that's perfect because that is where I want it to sit. That's where I have EVGA precision lined up, so if it needs to crank up the fan speeds as much as possible to get up to 72 degrees, to stay at 72 degrees Celsius rather, then it's going to stay there, even if it has to get up to 2400 RPM. If you can hear the system next to me, I have all of the fans cranked on high. I am feeling some pretty warm air coming out the top, and the rest of the fan noise is all on the 970s. They are cranking in there. I'm reading 2,396 RPM right now. So we are on scene 15, and once this is over, we're going to see how the scaling is compared to the normal 970 in the system that I did when I got it. And that will be coming up as well. So this is the Ultra preset. There's nothing changed, nothing at all. I'm just running it with another card. So we're going to go ahead and see what we get in just a minute or two here and compare the scaling from one card to two. So here is concluding to the end. Going to go ahead and focus on this mountain, and the results will pull up. What do we have? Alrighty guys, so of course we are on the Ultra quality preset.
This is madness!
At 1920 by 1080. We have the 4790K here and the two 970s. The FPS hit about 126 with a score of 5,271 and a minimum FPS of 29.7. I'll go ahead and bring that up to 30 FPS and a maximum FPS of 195.7. So compared to the original Valley benchmark, we got a score of 3,455 while running on only one card, an FPS of 82.6, a minimum of 36.6, and a max of 154.7. So the minimum was brought down by a whole 7 FPS, adding an additional card. Now, from what I believe, when that happens, The only thing that's actually causing that to happen is once you start the test, there is a little bit of a jolt there, and I think that's what causes it. I wish if there was a bug somewhere that they could fix that and make it not reflect the minimum FPS. Maybe it's programmed in there so it shows you that you did have a minimum FPS whenever that jolt was programmed to show up. But hey, you don't know, I don't know. Let's keep it at that, and we'll go ahead and move on to the Unigine Heaven benchmark. Alrighty guys, here we are on the Heaven benchmark. Now, like I just said after we got done with the Valley, as soon as I started this benchmark, there was a stutter. And of course, in the bottom right-hand corner, you guys can see it says our minimum FPS is 31.6. So I'm guessing that's where it's going to stay. I'm not suspecting that there will be any more jolts. There is no overclock on these cards whatsoever, like I've already said. I did have an overclock earlier, but I did see a little bit of an artifact on scene 3, so I had to bring it down, cancel that out, bring it back to default clock speeds, and now we are running once again just like this. Now, of course, on this test, it is a little bit more intensive. We are on Ultra, and there are 26 scenes instead of 18. So that's pretty much it. That's all I'm going to say for now. Of course, we are running on those two 970s, and they're doing an amazing job. So I'm going to shut up now. We're going to go ahead and fast forward to scene 25 in the beginning of 26, and we'll see what the scaling is like between two 970s compared to one. Alrighty guys, here we are on scene 25. It's going to go ahead and end, and then we'll get to scene 26. This is the very last one. Shows the city, streets, shows the lights, and it has a quick day cycle, and then it'll be over, and we'll see how well these compare. So here we are, of course, on the ultra quality preset, 1920 by 1080, same specs as usual. There we are with that minimum FPS of 31.6, so that did not change at all. A max FPS of 222.5, an average FPS of 120.2 with a score of 3028. Now we're going to go ahead and look over on my other screen as to what we have for Heaven. On the Ultra preset, on the Heaven benchmark, our score was 1750 with an average FPS of 69.5, a minimum FPS of 32.1, and a max of 129.8. So here we have very good scaling. Almost double the performance, not quite with the max FPS, but very close with the average from 120 to 70. That is a 50 FPS increase.
This is Sparta!
And as for the max FPS, we have about a 110 FPS increase. No, that's not right. We have about a 100 FPS increase, maybe 97 or somewhere along those lines. For the minimum FPS, of course, we did have that 32.1 on the 1970 score and the 31.6 here. So again, I'm pretty sure it just started off and did that little judder which caused that minimum FPS to be brought down and stay there. And I think that's how these benchmarks are designed by Unigine. I'm not entirely sure once more. Now we'll go ahead and get into the most intensive graphical test ever, Firestrike. And we'll be right back. Alrighty guys, here we go with 3D Mark Firestrike. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn off my mic for when the demo starts and then continue talking when the actual benchmark starts. But the demo is just for watching because my God, it's beautiful. And I will see you guys in a little bit because we're about to start. Such a beautiful freaking benchmark, guys. Wow, I love Firestrike so much for that. Alrighty, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started into the direct benchmarks. Now, these are pretty intense for the most part. Now, the first thing I noticed compared to doing one card, one 970, with these, oh my gosh, wow. When I first put the 970 in the system, I got a Firestrike score of 10,000 even, and I was absolutely blown away for that. I don't know how or why or what silicon lottery piece I got to get 10,000 even on the first try. No overclocking, no tweaking, no nothing. And here we are running these tests from a solid 50 and 60 FPS with one card to 110 FPS spikes. That is amazing. I've never seen anything like that. I did not expect literally double the performance and nearly double with the overall score. Now, I think the only thing that I misunderstood, or did not do, rather, was that once it hits the physics test, it still hits about the same FPS. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because I haven't gone into the NVIDIA control panel and set the physics to go to the CPU or one of the GPUs. That's probably what I should do. Of course, maybe in the last few tries, I think one of those I had one 970, I believe, controlling the physics, or one 760, and when I did those tests, and I don't believe that it did any better, actually. I think it might have done worse. Of course, the 760, yes, is an older card. It's not a great piece of machinery anymore. It's a little outdated. It can still push through some certain games, and it might last maybe another year, maybe, if that. And here we are at the physics test. Now, this is what I'm saying right here. Of course, we're still hitting 39 to 42 or 43 FPS maybe, and that's what I've seen already. So I'm pretty sure the physics are going directly towards the 4790K, which I'm completely... that I believe it is, actually, because I'm looking at an 85% CPU load right there. So that's probably it, and we're going to go ahead and dip back down. My bad. And we'll see what the CPU load is on the combined test. I think the physics are still going to go towards the falling statues, but I'm not entirely sure. I guess I should have been paying a little bit more attention to that earlier while doing the other tests, and then we could have figured that out a lot easier. So we're going to go ahead and take a look here in a moment. This test is amazing, and these cards don't do double scaling. They do not. I was sitting at about 20 FPS with one card, and now we're sitting at about 25. Still doing really well. The CPU load is at about 60%, so it looks like some of the physics is going towards the GPUs. I believe the highest FPS we got right there was 26. And we'll go ahead and reveal the score. Now, what score are we going to get? 15,079. So that is a full 1,000 points less, actually, than my original of 16,071. Now, regardless, this is still 5,000 more points with two cards compared to one card at 10,000 even. Now, that was the first try, and then the second try I did one card. I got 9,000, so a little bit lower. No problem at all. No big deal. Not something to really worry about. Now, here we are, 15,079. I'm not going to try any overclocks because that could IA crash in the middle of the test bench or just mess up in one way or another. But there you go with that score. It averages 15 to 16,000. Now we're going to go ahead and go into the Firestrike Extreme. We're not going to do the 4K test because the 4K is ridiculously demanding. I don't need a 4K monitor, of course, like it says there, but we are going to do Firestrike Extreme because that's for multi-GPU systems, and we're going to go ahead and skip the demo on that one and then go ahead and run it. So we'll go ahead and do that. Again, with this one, we'll go ahead and fast forward just like in the last one, so you don't have to sit through the entire thing. And we'll play, maybe in post I'll do Yakety Sax. That seems to be a very popular fast motion song. So we'll go ahead and do that and go ahead and look at some of these scores. Alrighty guys, here we are at the Firestrike Extreme combined test. And you guys can see, as compared to the other one, we are a whole 10 FPS lower on average. We're sitting at 15, 16, almost 17 FPS right there. This is so demanding because it increases the visual quality to 1440p quality. Now, it does make it look really, really pretty, but it also stresses everything a whole ton more. So our second score, once again lower than the normal score that we tried earlier today, 8,270. Now, physics, 39 FPS. Graphics test 2, 33. That's the one where the person's walking through that city. And the graphics test 1, 52. pretty standard. That's what I usually got on one 970, just on the normal benchmark, not the extreme. Of course, 8,270. What are you going to do? It's still very, very good, especially for this. If we go ahead and view run details, we'll see all of the memory, the modules, the speeds, everything is on here. What we're going to go ahead and do is, let's see if we can pull over the browser here. Here we are, 8,270, better than 92% of all results. This is the extreme version. And of course, on the normal version, we sit at 15,079, better than 99% of all results. So I am nowhere near, not even, I don't believe I'm even in the top 5,000 of results, because so many people are taking i7 5960Xs and putting 4-way SLI with Titan X graphics cards and getting ridiculously high scores on this. So this doesn't even compare. It doesn't even scratch the surface on this card potential. It really doesn't. It doesn't scratch the surface on any card potential because it's so low compared to everything else. A whole 10,000 plus points lower than what people do and what people have for certain benchmarks. Now that is ridiculous. What we're going to go ahead and do really quickly is run a Cinebench OpenGL test. Now I don't know how well that's going to fare. I know we tried it earlier with one graphics card with one 970, and the score we got on that OpenGL was 84. So let's go ahead and open up the benchmarks folder and go over to Cinebench here and give it a shot. I'm not going to run the CPU test, of course, because mine's already run at 878 right here. Go ahead and run the OpenGL. I'm not entirely sure if it's going to make any difference whatsoever. I'm really not. It may not. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. That's just how life is. Now what I did realize is that there is no more coil whine. When I would open up a test or a game and the FPS would be reaching into the hundreds and even thousands, that one 970, the first one that I got, had stupid high coil whine. Whenever I brought it down, it was sitting at normal FPS, it would never whine. And that's because, from my belief, that when a graphics card is pushing way more FPS than the monitor is supposed to handle to prevent tearing, even if I'm not seeing any tearing whatsoever in this instance, that's when the coil whine is immediately there. Now, coil whine happens on everything. Alright, I'll just stop there real quick and we'll see what the score is. 129.67 FPS. That's amazing. That is literally, let's see, that is about 46 more. 46 FPS higher than the first test that we tried. Now the only other thing we are going to try, guys, is FurMark. Now FurMark isn't really so intensive, but it does show you what it can handle. I'm not going to run the 15-minute burn-in test. I'm just going to do it burn-in test right here. I'm not going to change anything. Go ahead and hit go. Here we are. This is what we're getting. In the top left-hand corner, you guys can see an FPS counter. We are sitting at 122, 124, a minimum of 120, a max of 126, and an average of 123. This does have both graphics cards on here. It says NVIDIA SLI enabled with 2 GPUs. And this, I only run this for maybe a minute. Maybe. That's just to look at the temperatures, to see if there's any stuttering. It may look like there is some stuttering on the outside, and I believe that it just does that. I'm really not sure. I've seen that all the time before on all the other graphics cards that I've tested, like the 760s, and the very first graphics card I ever had, which was an HD Radeon 6450. That was one of the first one I had, and a very, very old one at that. As a matter of fact, one of my videos on my channel is 30 seconds long and is a Crysis 2 test with that card. So here we are. We just passed a minute and 5 seconds. There is no point to continue running this because we can see that it's very stable. It's doing a hell of a job. We have only still a minimum FPS of 120, so I'm going to go ahead and escape out of that And I think that's pretty much it for the benchmark side of things. I don't believe we're going to do any games here today. Maybe, maybe not. I don't believe so because I don't really think we necessarily need to. Even if everything does great, those are the synthetic benchmarks that I'm going to run instead of games, because we can't really tell the scaling in games so much. It's very, very hard to tell whether or not it's running super well or super crappy, or what, how much difference there is, and I don't have those numbers taken down because, of course, I didn't actually think of that ahead of time. So now the core temps are coming back down to an idle 35 degrees, and all the hot air is going to exhaust out of the system. I'm going to go ahead and do a conclusion video on these 970s, do some other videos to put this whole thing together, and here we go, and we'll go ahead and continue. So for this system, I could successfully say that it's done. It is done being upgraded for the current point in time. I don't think there are going to be any other hardware upgrades for a while, maybe a power supply in the near future, and that's just because I would like one of the Corsair ones with the eye at the end, so it has that digital interface. I can check on the temperatures and control the fan and all that, because that's all a really neat feature that you have. It's very, very neat that you could do that with a power supply, because a couple years ago there wasn't a ton of stuff like that out there. So here is the completed system for now. I'm going to go ahead and let it cool down before I edit all this stuff together, and that's really it. So there we are. That is an SLI benchmark of Zeus being loud of 2 GTX 970s. Now guys, conclusion time. Like I was saying, I'm resorting to iPhone quality because my phone, my camera batteries decided to die. So what the problem was that NVIDIA, there was some mistake. We don't know if this is true or if it wasn't, but there was some mistake between their PR team and their engineering team. So how they actually designed the card is to have 3.5 gigs available with another 500 megabytes on quote-unquote reserve. So obviously it's going to run a shit ton slower than everything else. It's not a big deal, because a lot of games that you'll run at this day and age, stock games, without any HD texture packs or anything like that, will maybe get up to 3 gigs of VRAM usage, maybe. But other than that, there's nothing to worry about. It's not going to it's not going to hurt your performance nearly as much as people think it will. So that's pretty much conclusion.
English, motherfucker, do you speak it? Yes. Then you know what I'm saying.
Conclusion, guys, if you have one 970, get another one. Why the hell not? You get so much more performance, so much more beautiful in-game eye candy. It's great. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please give it a like, go ahead and comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't. Can't speak. There are going to be some more videos coming up soon. I'm not entirely sure what. A CPU overclocking guide may show up sometime next week. Maybe a GPU overclocking guide. That's pretty straightforward. I may put them both into one video. I'm not entirely sure yet. But that's pretty much it. That's all I got for you guys today. I'm going to go ahead and edit and render this video, upload it, and get some sleep before work. So thank you guys so much for watching again, and I will see you guys next time.